State Tennessee, to call your first witness.
Call Brian Bolton.
Brian Bolton, please. Bolton, raise your right hand, put the left hand on the Bible, please, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you will give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Put your hand out. Have a seat here, please, sir. Mr. Bolton, good afternoon, sir.
Definitely.
Bolton, I want to need to speak up loudly, so all the ladies and gentlemen can hear, and all the lawyers can hear, and the court reporter can record your answers. So I need to speak up a little bit loudly. I know this is a difficult day for you, but we need to keep your voice up, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Bird, you may proceed.
Can you state your name for the record?
My name is Brian Bolton.
And how did you know Sean Bolton?
Sean was my brother. We shared the same mother, same father when we grew up together.
And how old was Sean when he was killed?
He was 33 years old.
Did he have an upcoming birthday?
He did. He was murdered on August 1st, 2015, and his birthday was on August 7th.
Did he have big plans for that day?
He did. His girlfriend at the time had learned that he had never been to a fancy restaurant for his birthday. She was going to take him to Folks Folly, which is a steakhouse here, and treat him to a very nice meal for his birthday to celebrate him.
And when Sean was no longer with you on that day, did your family do anything special to commemorate that?
Yes, when she told me that, I told her that I would step in and fill in for my brother, that I would buy her dinner at Folks Folly, and me and my family came together and ate dinner at Folks Folly that night, and that's something that we continue to do on every birthday as we sit down together. Some of us will still sit down together and celebrate his life, not on the day that he was murdered, but on the day that he was born.
Is Sean your older, was he your older or your younger brother?
He was my older brother, but smaller brother.
And Sean, what was Sean's military service?
Sean served in the United States Marine Corps Reserve for several years, and he was honorably discharged as a sergeant. And after he was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps, he still decided that he wanted to serve his country. So he joined the Army National Guard. I believe he was stationed in a reserve unit out of Hernando, Mississippi.
And how is it that Sean McCain, was he a gunner in the Marine?
He was. The story that I heard and what I was told is that before they were deployed to Iraq, that they were running through the city of Memphis in full gear with their weapons, some of which was heavy, including a machine gun, assault, squad automatic weapon. And the machine gunner passed out. He couldn't handle the heat and the weight. So my brother went over and picked up the gun. And apparently once you pass out carrying that, you don't get it back. And since my brother picked it up, they made him the machine gun.
And I know you're very soft-spoken. I'm going to ask you again just to sort of raise your voice a little bit so everybody can hear you, okay? What did it mean, Sean, to be a police officer?
It meant a lot to Sean to be a police officer to serve his community.
Was there anyone in your family who had an influence on him taking that path?
I'm sorry, can you turn that picture over? Thank you.
Is there someone in your family who influenced that decision?
Yes, from a young age, my Uncle Al, who's sitting in the back, had shared with us a story of how he had some medical training. I believe he was EMT, as well as being a law enforcement officer. He had the opportunity to save a young boy's life. And, when he came to visit us when we were little, my brother remembered a lot more than me because he was 2 years older. But Uncle Al had shared us with the newspaper article and the clippings, and we both had an interest in serving because of that.
Your passion for a photograph, and I'm going to ask you if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
Who is that in that photograph?
That is my brother.
They have that marked as the next number to the drawing.
Just ask Mr. Gangle interjections to this awful proof. This court will admit as exhibit 166, a photograph described by Mr. Brian Bolton as exhibit 166.
Commissioner College, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am, you may.
That's a photograph of Sean, the officer, Officer Bolton.
Yes.
Publishing for the jury, Your Honor, what's been previously marked as exhibit number 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that also Sean?
That is my brother, Sean. Yes.
Is Sean your brother?
Yes.
Right. Is there a funny story about that photograph?
Yes, so that was at my wedding. My wife and I were married on June 20th, 2015, and my brother broke his bow tie because I guess we had never worn bow ties before, and somehow it broke, and the photographer came in and had to jerry-rig the bow tie, and the pastor came in and said, "Your bow tie's crooked," and he spent a few extra minutes making us actually late for the ceremony a little bit to fix the bow tie. It was just a funny moment.
Does Sean have a particularly...
He liked pink, which is why I'm wearing my pink as well.
And after Sean had been killed, did you learn about his impact on the community from people he had touched?
Yes. At his visitation, the power went out that night, and it was at Hope Presbyterian Church where there's a big deep auditorium with a lot of steps, and they said, the funeral director came to me and said that they couldn't let people go down and see Sean because there was no lights, no power there. It was a very big, dark room. So they asked me to stand upstairs and to greet everybody who came. And as we were doing that, as I was shaking everybody's hand and greeting them, thanking them for being there, several people told me stories about my brother that I had never heard before. I was unaware of some of the stuff that he had done.
And did you meet anyone from St. Jude who he had touched as part of being in their community?
Yes, a group of ladies from St. Jude was there. I don't know if they were nurses or what they were, but they worked in the area where the people would go to donate blood, plasma, platelets, and such. And they said that Sean was a very regular donor there, so much so that when he didn't come by on a regular basis, they would reach out to him and ask him if he was okay. And he would, in a time of great need, right away to donate to St. Jude.
And as part of his duties as a police officer, did he have a particular segment of the community that he routinely reached out to?
Yes, my brother was fluent in Spanish as well as several other languages. And at the funeral, or at the visitation rather, there was a Hispanic lady that came up to me, and she shared her story of one of her interactions with my brother. I don't recall everything about it, but the gist of it was that she had been, her house had been broken into. I think she'd been assaulted, and she was in need of medical assistance as well as police. So even after my brother could have left, he stayed, and he came back and checked on her. And at one point, he was helping translate for the paramedics and the EMT that are on the scene, and he didn't understand a certain word or phrase, so he called a friend of his who also came to the visitation. And this is how I heard the other part of the story, because he's the one that received the phone call. He was in California at the time, and because of the time difference, it was 2, 3, 4 a.m., sometime in the middle of the night, early morning, that my brother called him and woke him up out of bed. And of course, he was a little bit upset for getting woken up out of
And he
bed.
served in the Marines with Sean?
Yes, they were in the Marine Corps together, and that's how they knew each other and became friends. And my brother just asked him, "How do you say this phrase or this word?" And he told him, and he said, "Thanks," and he went
something that you heard from Sean, either of those stories?
No, my brother would never brag upon himself or say anything like that.
That's something you heard after he was gone?
Yes.
Is that the same sort of generosity that he would show within your family?
Yes. He would oftentimes give money to our nieces and nephews of our older sisters, and as well as help out anybody and everybody. Whenever he learned of a need, he was always there to help, to lend in a hand, to give money, to do whatever was necessary. He would always be there for us.
Did he do something particular for you and your wife when you got married?
Yes. He decided that since there were several items, or a lot of items in our wedding registry that weren't purchased, that he felt that he needed to step in and help us and be there for us. So he decided to purchase everything that wasn't purchased off of our wedding registry list, even though he nor I had any idea what some of that stuff was. He bought it anyway and showed up with a bunch of boxes and told me that to expect more boxes on a regular basis, because as he could afford, he was going to purchase everything that was left off the list.
Did Josh Grimes, who had served with him and who was there that night, give you something in particular after Sean's death?
He did. I live in the same area that they patrolled, and Josh came by my house one night and he gave me a hat clip. It's made by Bremen. It goes on the brim of your hat. And it was pink and it had a unicorn on it, and it had 364 Delta, which is my brother's call sign, the radio sign. And it was a way of remembering him.
Was there something unique about the unicorn, Sean?
Yes. So I had seen on social media and other things that my brother liked unicorns, so I thought that he just liked unicorns. I didn't understand that there was a joke behind it. So even I was married just a short little while before he was killed, and as a groomsman's gift, I gave him, among other things, a coloring book that had to deal with unicorns, and he laughed about it. And I asked him, "You like unicorns, right?" He said, "Well, you know that's a joke, right?" And I didn't, but I said I did. So we laughed it off. And afterwards, Grimes, among others, told me that, Officer Grimes, among others, told me that Sean liked to goof off a little bit and good-natured humor. Whenever he would get on the radio, instead of using the phonetic alphabet, the letter U would be uniform. He would have said, say, unicorn. And he always tried to get the dispatchers to respond with unicorn instead of uniform over the radio.
And was that story demonstrate really the big prankster kind of personality that he displayed throughout his life?
Yes, he had an incredible sense of humor, but it was also a very intelligent humor.
And what kind of, you can tell to the jury, the impact of losing Sean had on your family?
The night of August 1st, 2015, I, like everybody else, they put the wrong name, the wrong age, the wrong marital status, that he had children when he didn't, and it was on the TV, and that's how we all thought maybe it wasn't him. It couldn't be him because they had the wrong name. And my mother was a nurse at the time, and she was in a patient's room, and she was preparing to place an IV. And she looked up, and the patient had the TV on the news, and she looked up and saw a picture of her son saying that he had been murdered. And she hasn't been able to go back to work since. She tried, and she couldn't. She can't work.
Did Sean's death contribute some difficulties she was already having with your family?
Yes.
And did you and Sean have a difficult background?
Yes. I don't know of any one person that had a great childhood, but for me and my brother, my brother was born in 1981. I was born in 1983. My parents divorced in 1987, and they got back together in 1990 and separated in 1994, reconciling again in 2003 or so, 2003, 2004. But for that period of time, my mother had some addiction issues, and my father was eventually considered 100% disabled due to PTSD from his service in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. Always having horrible nightmares, and it just wasn't a very pleasant childhood. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of physical fighting. There's some tug-of-war matches with us being on the other side of our parents. There were times where we stayed with, I have aunts and uncles in the back, and they can tell you about how we stayed with them at various times throughout our childhood, even things that I don't remember that my brother did that remember a lot more than me. I think you can suffice it to say that we didn't have the most pleasant of childhoods.
And did, at some point, was there a tragedy in your family that after you'd all sort of gone to college or gone your separate ways that brought you and your brother particularly close?
Yes, that would be the declining health of my father. My brother and I were never particularly close until I moved back to Memphis. I left Memphis. I moved back to Memphis to help take care of my dad. I was actually in South Haven, Mississippi, to where I moved in with him, and I was helping care for him. And I did that for a year, maybe two, until it came to the point where we had to put him in a nursing home. And I told my brother that I was done. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I needed a break. So my brother started taking over, handling my father's affairs. And that's really how we reconnected and started talking to each other again, and truly becoming friends, and just really I was really getting to be friends with my brother.
And after Sean died, was there a tragedy in your family with you and your wife that made the loss of Sean and his absence particularly painful to you?
Yes, that would be the birth and death of my daughter. My daughter Virginia was born with a heart condition called tetralogy of Fallot. It was a very serious condition, and she spent a lot of time in the hospital when she was first born, and we had her home for a little bit. And she went back in for heart surgery, and she eventually passed away due to complications from the heart surgery at Le Bonheur. And I know that my brother, bringing us meals, just offering support, helping take care of our pets, taking care of our house, as me and my wife essentially lived at Le Bonheur with our daughter. I know that my brother would have been taking care of everything else for me. He would have been right there with us by our side. I know that my brother would have been taking care of everything else for me. He would have been right there with us by our side.
Is there other impact that it had on you and members of your family about your safety and how you feel?
Yes, I know. I won't speak for everybody, but I became hypervigilant for a very long time, even to this day. I try to be constantly aware of my surroundings and the threats that are around me. In restaurants, it annoys my wife that I like to sit facing the door so I can see people coming in and out, because I don't want somebody sneaking up behind me and causing harm to me or my wife. And in a lot of ways, I'm somewhat hypervigilant.
Was there a restaurant that Sean frequented when he was out on patrol?
I don't know if he was out on patrol, but I remember hearing the stories of the McAllisters at Trinity Road in Germantown. My brother was frequented to there, and they knew him, and they knew that he was a police officer. And the day after he had been murdered, there was a specific table that he usually sat at. They closed that table off and put the meal that he got all the time there. They set it out and said that was in honor of Sean, and they left it up for 2 or 3 days.
Does that story demonstrate the effect that your brother Sean had on members of his community?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Angeli or Ms. Massey. No questions. Ms. Bolton wants to offer you. Step down, please.
Thank you.
state and call your next witness.
Officer Boyd.
Officer Boyd, please. Someone to the servant Deputy Smith, yes, please, sir. Place your left hand on that Bible and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you will give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Put your hand out. Officer Boyd, have a seat here, please, sir. Watch your step. Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Bird, you may proceed.
You say your name for the record, please.
Jacobo Boyd, Jacoba. Last name Boyd, Boyd.
And I know this jury seen you earlier in the week. You were in uniform, man. How are you employed?
The Memphis Police Department,
And how long have you been an officer at the Memphis Police Department?
12 years.
And did you know Sean Bolton?
Yes.
Beyond just being a police officer, did you know him in other ways?
Yeah, I knew him before he was a police officer.
How long did you know Sean?
Approximately 5 years, give or take.
And what was your background that you had in common with him?
We both were Marines, U.S. Marines.
Did you? And
I spoke with him before when he worked as a bouncer in a nightclub and talked to him about coming to the police department and answer a lot of questions and basically convince him to come to the police department.
what did being a police officer mean to Sean?
And everything to him. He's a selfless guy. Just wanted to serve his community and give back.
After Sean had been killed, did you hear from members of the community about the impact that he had had?
Yes. There's an older black gentleman that approached me in the store one day, and he spoke very highly of him, and he told me that Sean would come by and, when he's sitting in the neighborhood, he would check on him and, sit and talk to him for a little bit, make sure he had everything that he needed, and, offer any kind of assistance that he could. And also, a few Hispanics that lived in Cottonwood Apartments, they would approach me and they would tell me, that they felt safer when he was there because he would always be around. He would always ride through and wave and talk to the children, things like that.
Sean essentially the neighborhood policeman, the one that people knew.
Yes.
And I know you were there the night that Sean was killed. You and several of the officers who served with him tried to render aid.
Yes, ma'am.
Have some of those officers, as a result of this event, left the police force?
Yes. Several of them that was there. Like I said earlier, there was 3 of us that arrived there simultaneously. Officer Bobo, he's still in the department. He testified earlier this week. But the other guy that was there, he's no longer with the department. He couldn't handle the stress, the trauma of it. There's also other members of the department that left because of they just couldn't deal with the trauma of it.
And those of you that were there, that were named, is it something that stays with you?
Yes. Me in particular, it sticks with me heavy because a couple hours before Sean was murdered, to not worry about what's going on because everybody was down. He brought us all up and he told us that, everything was fine and that we're here for the community. We're not here for them. We're not here for the administration or the city. We're there to serve the public.
And regardless of what was going on in the department or what was going on with you guys personally, was it Sean's philosophy that he was there to serve his neighborhood, to serve his ward, to serve the people that he was around every day and acting in it.
Yeah. That's
That
what
important to
difference. That's very important to them.
you got to leave a hole in the department, and then all of you were present.
Of course it is.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Mr. Dangle, any questions of Officer Bolton? Yes, any questions, Judge? We want to thank you for returning to court. We'll excuse you from additional testimony. As you go home, sir. Be safe out there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You will not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else, and will resume shortly. Can you follow Deputy Smith, please? For the record, jury's out. Court sat in recess 2 minutes. I want to remain seated. Court sat in recess. On both sides, ready to proceed? Yes. We are going. Thank you for the jury, please, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone be seated. State, you may call your next witness.
Whitney Bailey.
Whitney Bailey. Bailey, good afternoon, ma'am. Come forward right here to where Deputy Smith is standing on the seal of Shelby County. And once you get to Deputy Smith, if you will hand your portfolio to Deputy Smith, place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you will give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth shall be God?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am. Take your hand down. Step, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Dwyer, you may proceed.
Can you tell us your name, please, and spell your first and last name for ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes, my name is Whitney Bailey. It's Whitney, Bailey, Bailey.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed for the Western District of Tennessee in the U.S. Probation Office.
As a probation officer, what are your duties?
As a probation officer, I work in the post-conviction unit, and my duties are to supervise offenders who are released from custody, who are on what we call supervised release or probation. And we are to go over their conditions and enforce their conditions, and also to help them with services, basically meeting reentry needs, but also making sure that they comply with their conditions.
Did you supervise a Tremaine Wilbourn as part of your duties as a federal probation officer?
Yes, I did.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point him out and describe something that he's wearing?
He's wearing glasses and a black shirt.
The record reflects she's identified.
The record will reflect that Ms. Bailey has described as one, two, and has identified the defendant, Mr. Tremaine Wilbourn. You may proceed, Ms. Dwyer.
I can pass it out to the floor to you and ask you if you can identify it.
Yes, I can. This is his judgment and commitment from the United States District Court in the Western District of Tennessee.
And what was he convicted of?
He was convicted of armed bank robbery and carrying a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence.
And are those crimes of violence to a person?
Yes, they are.
And what are the underlying facts of those convictions? Can you tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
The underlying facts were that Mr. Wilbourn and I believe it was Mr. Mackey went into a Friendship Bank in Covington, Tennessee around June of 2005, and they were wearing masks, and they were both armed with firearms. And I believe Mr. Wilbourn's actually had the people in the bank lie down on the floor while Mr. Mackey took the money from the teller station. Then they both left the bank, and the car would not start, and so they fled on foot until they were apprehended.
And were the people made to lie on the floor?
Yes, they were made to lie on the floor in the bank.
And the money that was taken from Kelly taken in Illinois?
Yes, it was.
And does that document in front of you reflect all the information containing the federal conviction of Tremaine Wilbourn for armed bank robbery and carrying a firearm during in relation to a crime of violence?
Yes, it does.
Is that certified by the federal courts?
Yes, this is a certified copy.
Then we mark that as an execution.
Ms. Gangula, Ms. Paxton, Ms. Hall, any objections to this offer?
No objections, sir.
This will be admitted as exhibit number 167, 167. This is a document. Six-page document, a judgment in a criminal case showing convictions out of federal court for armed bank robbery and carrying a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence. Date conviction, June 15, 2005. Exhibit number 167. Mr. Dwyer, you may proceed.
And when was Mr. Wilbourn, or when did you meet Mr. Wilbourn in relation to his release from federal prison?
I first met Mr. Wilbourn while he was at Dearson Charities, which is a halfway house here in Memphis, and he was still serving his sentence at the halfway house. I met him in January of 2014.
Was he then at some point returned to federal prison for being released from probation?
He was returned to a federal holding facility in Mason, Tennessee. Yes, in around June of 2014. His release was in July.
And did you, if I can pass another document forward to you and ask you to identify it?
Yes.
And what is that?
This is another copy of the judgment and commitment. I'm sorry. And this is the signed copy by Mr. Wilbourn and myself. We signed it on May 30th, 2014, which is another time I met with him at the halfway house.
And why did you both sign that document? What was the purpose of signing that document?
We both signed it. It's one of my duties as a probation officer when we first meet with our... They have to know what their conditions are because, of course, we're supposed to enforce the conditions, and we have to make sure that they understand the conditions. So we are obligated to actually read it with them and give them a copy and make sure they understand, and he's signed understanding.
Maybe we're opposed to this.
Ms. Paxton, Mr. Gangula, Ms. Hall, any objections?
No objection.
This will be admitted as exhibit 168, 168. This is a 7-page document of judgment and a criminal case of judgment conviction relating to the convictions of armed bank robbery and carrying a weapon during and in relation to a crime of violence identified by that was signed by herself and by Mr. Wilbourn, explaining terms and conditions of his release. This document was signed on May 30th, 2016. Exhibit 168. Mr. Dwyer, you may proceed.
And you went over this document in May of 2014. Was he still in custody or in the halfway house at that point?
Yes, ma'am. He was still at the halfway house. They're still technically in custody, but they're allowed to go to the halfway house basically to get restarted in the community before they're released. So to give them an opportunity to get a job, that kind of thing, so they have a job when they get out.
And you signed it, Mr. Wilbourn signed this. I can display Is this your signature is there?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this the signature for
Yes, it is.
And what were the rules and conditions of probation that you went over with Mr. Wilbourn and explained to him as conditions of probation?
Well, we have what we call mandatory conditions and also standard conditions, and then there's also special conditions that the judge imposes in each case. The mandatory conditions, first and foremost, the first one is not to commit another federal, state, or local crime, and shall not possess a firearm, ammunition, or destructive device as defined in 18 U.S.C. 921.
Stop for a second. That is the first rule. Is that correct?
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Another mandatory condition is for them to report within 72 hours and to refrain from any unlawful use of controlled substance. Some of the standard conditions would be that the defendant shall refrain from excessive use of alcohol, shall not purchase, possess, use, distribute, or administer any narcotic or other controlled substance, or any paraphernalia related to substances except as prescribed by a physician, shall submit to periodic drug tests as directed by the probation officer. Another one is the defendant shall not frequent places where drugs are illegally sold, used, distributed, or administered. The defendant shall not associate with any persons engaged in criminal activity, shall not associate with any person convicted of a felony unless granted permission to do so by the probation officer. One last one would be that the defendant has to permit the probation officer to visit him or her at any time at home or elsewhere, and shall permit confiscation of any contraband observed. Thank you.
And did you explain to Mr. Wilbourn that violating any of those conditions would cause him to be returned to federal custody?
I did. Certainly our office's intent is not to send people back to prison, but there are certain violations. For instance, a grade A violation would be, a crime of violence, that kind of thing, would definitely be reported to the court immediately and ask for a warrant. There's other violations, such as maybe drug use, that would still be reported to the court, but we may not ask for custody. But yes, violations are reported to the court.
Would carrying a firearm while you're on probation after having been convicted of a federal crime also subject you to return to federal custody?
Yes, it would.
And you explained that to him, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
On August 1st, 2015, was Tremaine Wilbourn still on federal probation?
Yes, he was.
Another question, Charlie?
Thank you, Ms. Dwyer. Ms. Ashley, any questions of Ms. Bailey? Yes, ma'am. You may proceed.
Thank you, Donna.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Ms. Bailey.
Good afternoon.
I am Tremaine Wilbourn, and I have asked you a few questions.
Okay.
In the course of the supervision, do you attend to any needs that the supervisor might have? Actually, is that correct?
That's correct.
Which means that if you're going to have mental health needs or any other needs, medical needs, you will provide them. Is that correct?
We could refer him to different things. Our office we can only provide services if we have a special condition for certain things. So we would have to indicate that there's a need for that, but yes.
Would you be the one reporting such conditions if there was a special need that you would notice as a supervisor?
Can you repeat the question?
If you said you only can provide certain services, if you do experience a need.
Yes, exactly. If we observe a need, or if a client tells us there's a need, or even we do a lot of collateral checks. So if a family member or someone expresses a need, then yes, we would try to provide a service, or at least refer them for what kind of services they need.
And this is what happened during the course of the supervision of Tremaine Wilbourn. Is it correct in this case?
Did you have to refer Mr. Wilbourn to any treatment for any special needs?
I did not. I supervised Mr. Wilbourn from about July when he was released until October when he, and then his case was actually switched to another probation officer.
And so you were completely removed from the rest of the records for the time that Mr. Wilbourn was supervised? You did not have any impact on any of the assessment that were provided?
I did not have an impact on the assessment, no.
Whether it was a need for medical help or mental health? Or
I have access to our chronological records, but I didn't have any involvement with his assessment.
Isn't it correct that for the offense that you explained to the jury here in federal court, did Mr. Wilbourn plead guilty in that offense? Is that right?
That's correct.
So he accepted responsibility, is that correct?
He did plead guilty, yes.
He also signed the agreement with you, and he did accept the condition that he was under, is that correct?
Yes, he did sign that document.
And you mentioned that he did return to the Mason facility shortly in June, is that correct, for a month, about a month?
That's correct.
And that was for failing a drug test, is that correct?
My understanding is it was for failing a drug test, and they also confiscated a phone in which he had a lit cigarette in the bathroom at the halfway house, and he was throwing gang signs.
He was not supposed to be smoking in the facility.
He was not supposed to be smoking inside the facility. That is correct.
Just a second, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing further from this witness.
Are any additional questions of Ms. Bailey?
Basically asked you about while he was at the halfway house.
Yes, ma'am.
He was also employed while he was at the halfway house at Stedline, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how did he come to lose that job?
Can I refer to my notes?
Yes, ma'am.
I met with his counselor at the halfway house on May 30th, 2014, and she advised me that he was employed by Stedline from March 14th, 2014 to March 24th, 2014, and that he was fired for misconduct after he threatened another coworker, and that on March 27th, 2014, he signed out. They have to sign out from the halfway house. He's out for work, and he did not check in.
And given that and the instances of not abiding by the rules of Pearson, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The gang-related activity, they
Yes, ma'am.
expelled him and sent him back to federal prison.
That's correct. I believe there was a second positive for marijuana on June 11th, which was right before they sent him back. And then he did get out on his release date, which was July 1st, and I met with him on July 2nd.
Thank you.
Ms. Paxton, additional question? Yes, ma'am. I want to thank you for being in court today, being here on your Sunday. I'm going to excuse some additional testimony. You cannot discuss your testimony with anyone now. You step down and watch yourself, please.
Okay, thank you,
ma'am.
sir.
So you have an additional proof to submit a sentencing.
We also rely upon exhibit number 3, previously introduced, and then the acquisition of other definitely during this time.
Yes, ma'am, you may.
Publishing of the jury, which concerns the line of exhibit number 3. Again, Your Honor, this is stipulation regarding Tremaine Wilbourn, who had been previously convicted of felonies involving use or attempted use of violence, having acknowledged the conditions of his release.
Yes, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, again, that's the stipulation that has been admitted as exhibit number 3 when it was submitted during the course of the trial. The stipulation simply indicated Mr. Wilbourn had been convicted of felony offenses involving use or attempted use of violence, and you now know that those felony convictions that involve the use or attempted use of violence are in fact a felony conviction for armed bank robbery and for carrying a weapon during and in relation to a crime of violence. That stipulation Mr. Wilbourn gave at the guilt phase of the trial, and those are the 2 convictions that the state relying on previous felony convictions other than the first-degree murder charge, the statutory elements of which involve the use of violence to a person. Those are the 2 convictions that the state are relying on. State, you have an additional proof.
State rests, Your Honor, as to its case in chief for the station.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:20. This would be an appropriate time to stop for today. If Mr. Wilbourn, Mr. Ganguli, Ms. Pasley, Ms. Hall have any mitigation proof, and again, mitigation proof are something that you do not have to find beyond a reasonable doubt. They will present that proof to you tomorrow morning. It will be inappropriate to start that tonight. We're going to start at 10 o'clock tomorrow, about an hour later. And the reason for that, I think we have like 40 cases on the docket tomorrow. That's something that should not have happened. I'm sure I did it. And I also have a wedding that I have to perform tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock here in the courtroom. So we'll start at 10. Remember the court's instructions. You still cannot discuss the case with anyone or amongst yourselves. If Mr. Wilbourn has additional proof on mitigation, you will hear that tomorrow morning. Let me know how the accommodations are. Let me know if the meals are digestible. And let me know if the deputies are treating you well. And I'll see you back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Follow Deputy Smith, please. And for the record, jurors, are there any other issues that we need to address before we adjourn? Court stand adjourned to 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock Monday morning, November 5th, 2018 for the regular calendar, and 10 o'clock for the continuation of this trial.
All rise. Come on, big second. Look, what time is it? 12:09 a.m. 7 o'clock, 10 a.m. trial.